Good morning students. Once again welcome back. Our last video was about reproduction from other parts like stem, roots, leaves and spores. Today we will be discussing about crops. About crops. Clear? Food is an essential component in everyone's life. We can't live without food. Yes or no? Yes. And one interesting fact is that most of the food what we get is from plants. Most of the food what we get is from what? Plants. So these plants that are grown or that are cultivated in large quantities in a particular area during a particular season is termed as crops. Clear? So the plants that are grown or that are cultivated in large quantities in a particular area during a particular season is termed as crops. Now what do you mean by crops? The plants that are grown and cultivated in large quantities in a particular area during a particular season is called as crops. Different type of crops are grown in different places on the basis of climatic conditions, soil conditions and availability of water, etc. Different types of crops are grown at different places on the basis of what? Soil conditions, climatic conditions and availability of water. When it comes to India, we can see that crops are categorized into two categories. What are they? Rabi crops and kharif crops. So crops are categorized into two types: rabi crops and kharif crops. What do you mean by rabi crops? The crops that are grown in winter are known as rabi crops. Clear? The crops that are grown in winter season are known as rabi crops. Just say for example, wheat and gram. These are crops that are grown in winter, which means say from November to April. These crops do not depend on rain and are called rabi crops. Clear? And when it comes to vegetables, we can see that cabbage, cauliflower, peas and beans are crops or plants that are grown in a winter and are called rabi crops. Then, what do you mean by kharif crops? The crops that are grown in summer are known as kharif crops. The crops that are grown in summer season are known as kharif crops. Crops like rice, maize, jowar, bajra are crops that are grown in summer, say from June to October. Clear? Crops like rice, maize, jowar, bajra are grown in summer, say from June to October. And these crops are largely dependent on rains and are called kharif crops. Then vegetables like brinjal, pumpkin, groundnut also grow well in summer season. Clear? So the crops that are grown in winter are known as rabi crops. Then the crops that are grown in summer Next, we will move on to healthy crops. Our next topic is healthy crops. Clear? Healthy crops. In order to satisfy or in order to meet or in order to feed the entire people or entire population of a country, the crops must be good and healthy. And one important thing is that the crops must be grown in large quantities. Clear? In order to feed the entire population of a country, the crops must be good and healthy, and the crops must be grown in large quantities. Clear? So, this practice of growing crops in large quantities is known as agriculture. Clear? The practice of growing crops in large quantities are known as agriculture. Clear? In order to meet or in order to feed the entire population of a country, the crops must be good and healthy, and the crops must be grown in large quantities. So that practice of growing crops in large quantities is termed as agriculture. Clear? The practice of growing crops in large quantities is called agriculture. Is that clear? Next, we will see the essential or important requirements to produce a good crop. Essential requirements to produce a good crop. First of all, it is a matter of knowledge of farmers. Farmers should have a proper knowledge about the soil, climatic conditions, and seasons for growing different types of crops. Clear? First of all, farmers should have proper knowledge about the soil, about the climatic conditions, and the seasons for growing different types of crops. Second one, the farmers should sow or plant healthy and ripe seeds. Farmers should plant healthy and ripe seeds. Then they should plow the field properly. They should turn up or loosen the soil properly in order to grow the next crop. Farmers should sow ripe and healthy seeds, and they should plow the field properly and make it ready for the next growing crop. And the third one is the use of fertilizers. What is the meaning of fertilizer? Fertilizer means organic or inorganic substances that are added in the soil to make plants or crops grow better. Organic or inorganic substances that are added in the soil to make plants or crops grow better. The third one is the use of fertilizers. Farmers should use right amount of fertilizers to increase the nutrients in the soil. These fertilizers are of two types: organic fertilizers and inorganic fertilizers. Organic fertilizers or manures are obtained from cow dung and dead and decayed plants and animals and from other waste. Clear? And what about inorganic fertilizer?
They are chemical substances which is made of urea, sulfates and nitrates. The use of inorganic fertilizers or chemical fertilizers, they are harmful to our environment. Clear? Next, proper water supply is necessary to produce good and healthy crop. Proper water supply is necessary to produce a good and healthy crop. And the next one is the use of insecticides and pesticides. Insecticides and the use of insecticides and pesticides, which means that they are substances to kill insects or animals that are harmful to the cultivated plants or crops. Clear? The next one is farmers should use insecticides or pesticides in crops to prevent insects and pests. Clear? Farmers should use insecticides and pesticides to prevent insects or pests which are harmful to the cultivated plants or crops. And the final one is harvesting, which means proper cutting and gathering of crops. That process is called harvesting. So farmers should properly cut the crops and gather it. That process is called harvesting. Clear? Proper cutting and gathering of crops, that process is called harvesting. Next is crop protection. Next is crop clear. Next is crop protection. What do you understand by these two words? Crop protection. Crop protection means protection of crops against insects, pests or diseases, from weeds, from fungi, by using insecticides, pesticides or fungicides. Clear? Protection of crops from insects, pests, weeds or a certain type of diseases from fungi by using insecticides, pesticides or fungicides. Clear? Yes. Next, how we can protect our crop? Animals like cows and goats, they are called grazing animals. They are called what? Grazing So animals like cows and goats, they are called grazing animals, which means these are animals that eat only grass or grown up plants from a particular area. That's why they are called grazing animals. So these animals will eat up the plants or the crops. So we must prevent these animals from the field. Another one is animals like rats, squirrels, or birds will eat up the fruits and crops. So they also must be kept away from the field. Clear? First one is animals like cows and goats. They are called grazing animals. They will eat up the plants or the crops. So they must be kept away from the field. Another one is animals like squirrels, rats or birds. They will eat up the fruits of the plant. So they must be also kept away from the field. Next one is insects like caterpillar or grasshoppers, or certain microbes like bacteria or viruses which cause diseases in plants or crops. So we must, or farmers must use insecticides or pesticides to prevent them or to kill them. Clear? So these are the ways we can protect our crops from certain diseases or from certain animals or from certain insects. Our last topic is storage of crops. Storage of crops. When the crops are ripened, they are cut and properly gathered. That process is called harvesting. So, when the crops are ripened, they are harvested, and after that they are dried and stored as grain. Clear? When the crops are ripened, they are harvested and they are dried and stored as grain. Clear? They are stored as grain. Now, one important thing is that this grain, or they must be kept away from insects or animals like squirrels, moles, rats, etc., or from birds. Clear? For this purpose, farmers use a well-dried or ventilated rooms or rooms with air circulation. So, for this purpose, farmers use dry or well ventilated rooms. And again, farmers use metallic bins or jute bags to store grain. If the grains are of large quantities, they are stored in silos or granaries. Clear? If the grains are of large quantities, or if the storage is of large quantity, then they are stored in silos or granaries. What is the meaning of these silos? It's a tall tower or a pit used to store grain. And what is this granary? It is similar to silos, that is, it's a storehouse of grain. So now the first chapter is over. So in this topic or in this module, we discussed about crops and the different types of crop, that is kharif crops and rabi crops. Next, healthy crops, essential requirements to produce a good crop. Then after that, crop protection, use of insecticides, pesticides or fungicides, and the last one is storage of crops. So dear students, our first chapter is over. Let us recall what we have discussed in chapter 1, that is growing plants. First of all, in the live class we discussed about reproduction, the definition of reproduction. Then we discussed about reproduction from seeds, The seed grows into a seedling and a new plant grows out from that seedling. Again, structure of a seed, what is that called? A seed coat, seed leaves, embryo. Next one is germination of seeds, then definition of germination, then conditions necessary for germination such as sunlight, then water, air. Next is seed dispersal and its agents, and what is there in seed dispersal and its agents? Dispersal by wind, dispersal by water, dispersal by animals, and the last one is dispersal by explosion. Next, reproduction from other parts, which includes reproduction from stem, reproduction from roots, then reproduction from leaves and spores. And the final topic, it is crops. There what we discussed there, types of crops, definition of crops, then kharif crops and rabi crops, then healthy crops, essential requirements to produce a good crop, crop protection, storage of crops. I hope that you understood all these things, and study the key terms which is given in page number 11. These key terms are very important and they will come or they may ask in examination. Once again, I would like to remind you that read the text twice or thrice and study the entire thing what we discussed in chapter 1. Okay? Thank you.